Welcome to Eurovision Legends, Åse Kleveland.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with you today.
Lovely. How are you?
Well, this is a very special year, most over the world. And considering that, I have nothing to complain about. This has been a very exciting year for me as, one of the things are that I, some months ago, released my first album in 44 years. So I'm now giving concerts, I'm back in music, and I do enjoy it.
I would love to talk about your new album later. But first, I must say, it's a big honor to talk to you in my podcast. We haven't spoken for 20 years.
Oh, is it that long?
we met, you and I, on the luxurious Säfflebussen from Stockholm to Åmål, when we stopped in Karlstad for what we in Sweden call a pinkepaus. And I approached you and told you that I loved your hosting in 1986.
Oh, that was you.
To which you replied, my little friend, were you even born then? And I told you proudly that yes, I was 6 months old.
Well, so it was a reasonable question, I think.
I can assure this was a bigger moment for me than for you, so I believe you have forgotten about it.
Yes, to be honest.
In 1966, you took part in the Norwegian pre-selection Melodi Grand Prix. Was this the first time you were offered to compete?
Yes, it was. I was quite young then. I just turned 17. Well, I think many people in Norway were they were surprised that I was taking part in the Eurovision Song Contest because I was not known as a pop singer. I was known being quite a, should you say, serious young girl playing classical guitar and singing Bob Dylan, singing many of the songs from the beginning of the protest wave that was coming on in the middle of the 60s.
Before we talk about this pre-selection, I would like to clear some things up because it's a bit messy when you try to explain it. But 5 artists and 5 songs competed, and each of the songs was performed twice by different artists, once with a small band and once with an orchestra. Do you remember the 4 other singers who took part in this final?
Oh, it was Gryne Molvik, who was singing, in fact, the song that I was singing in Luxembourg.
Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd länge. Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd länge.
Then we had Wenche Myhre, who is still going on as an artist, a wonderful artist, and she had a great breakthrough in Germany. We had Kirsti Sparbo was the 4th, and Anita Tallaug.
Exactly. You sang the songs Ge mig fri and Intet nytt under solen. How come you were offered these 2 songs? Do you remember that?
Well, I think the main reason why I was invited to join the Eurovision Song Contest, the pre-selection, was the fact that Norway had not a very strong record. So they were trying to be somewhat strategic, asking themselves in the committee, what is popular right now in Europe when it comes to pop music? And so they draw the conclusion that protest songs and more political songs, that was something coming very strongly. And as I had just the year before had a breakthrough in France, singing, among other things, Dylan in French, I was invited, and they were, of course, hoping that, I could score some points for Norway. And the other one, the one that won, was I was giving that one to sing because I was, if I may say it myself, quite a good guitar player. And this was like a jazz waltz, and they wanted someone who could treat an instrument at the same time. So that was the reason.
What I understand, the song Ge mig fri was the song that most people thought would win in advance.
Yes, that's right. And I was singing that with the big broadcasting orchestra. Well, each one of us had one song with a big orchestra, and that was sort of my song. And then they had the ones with a small band. So they thought that Ge mig fri or Give Me Free, the protest song, would be the winner.
Det skal finnes en sang med en underlig klang. Det skal finnes en sang som ble sunget en gang. Denne sangen vil si: Gi meg fri, gi meg fri, gi meg fri. Har du hørt den før?
But it didn't turn out that way.
Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd lenge. Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd lenge. Han så snill når han spør meg om hva som har hendt meg, om solen har brent meg.
It still is also the shortest song in the final. It was a little bit less than 2 minutes.
The studio version of the song was just over 1.5 minutes long, so you could really sing it twice if you wanted to.
Yes, that's right.
As I understand it, you sang the second verse twice to make it longer.
Yes, we did that. And it was also, a very... most songs in the Eurovision Song Contests are about love, young people falling in love or falling out of love and whatever. But this one was so different, and it was quite a sad story with an old man sitting there thinking about the life he had and the life that was now soon be over. And at his feet, there was a young girl sitting there looking quite sadly on this old man, and not much fun there.
The song has a very special trait in that it has 5 4-time signature.
Well, it sounds like da 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 da. Jeg vet om en gammel mann, pa pa da pa pa. There was a coincidence about exactly this, because this year there were 2 songs in the same beat. They were from Norway and from Sweden, and in the end we were number 2 and 3. So maybe we should try this beat once more, because it worked at least then.
You broke the tradition expecting female performance at the time to wear a dress. You opted for a pantsuit in pink.
Yes, it was the first time in the Eurovision Song Contest, and for many years I was the one who did that. I was a teenager. I hated dresses. I liked to wear pantsuits and so on. And the year before, one of the big fashion houses in Paris had presented some styles like this. As I was working in France at that time, I thought, wow, this is what I'm going to have when I go to Luxembourg. And nobody forgot it. For years here in Norway, when you have these variety shows and so on, there was also some tall man coming in a pink pajama and singing with a deep voice. So my grandmother thought it was a disgrace for the whole family that I was doing this. But, well, no one forgot it.
What I heard was that the pantsuit was made so people should understand it was pink, even though it was black and white TV transmission.
Yes, it was made. There were before this suit was created. Then the people in the NRK, they were testing out which color looks the best in black and white. That's a challenge. And so they found out, and I was also part of this, that pink color, it did look sort of, it was not too dark, not too light. And of course, for those who were there, I hope they were impressed.
Do you remember if you were very nervous?
No. You know, when you're 16, 17, it's all natural. I mean, it's in that way one of the best times during the life to do things like that, because at least I didn't have any nerves. It was great. In a way, I took it for granted.
You ended up in a third place, which remained the best result for Norway until Bobby Sox won the entire contest in 1985. And you said it before that Sweden came second with Svante Thuresson and Lill Lindfors. And I talked to Lill just a few days ago in this podcast, and she had a question for you.
Hey, Åse. I have a question for you. What is your favorite instrument? What is the sound of that instrument that touches your heart?
Oh, that was... Well, in a way, it's very easy for me to answer it, because having been trained in classical guitar since I was 9 years old and had my debut as a classical guitarist, of course, the guitar is very close to my heart. But as the years have passed by and when rock and roll came on the stage, I haven't played electric guitar. But I think the guitar is so special because if you just have the right musicians, you can make it sound almost in all different ways. The guitar is my favorite instrument.
Lill Lindfors later became the host of Eurovision in 1985, and as we all know, she lost her skirt that year and got a new Eurovision rule named after her. And Norway won in Sweden with Bobby Sox, and you were asked to host the event with your dress on.
Yes, but so many people here in Norway were very, as I had been dressed earlier in pink pants and whatever, they were in a way expecting that I might do a little trick again, but I didn't. I had 2 beautiful dresses and I loved it. But I mean, Lill is the one who really can do things like that. She's fabulous and she's still going strong.
Do you remember how you got the question to host the event?
Yes, when Norway won in Sweden in 85, this was the first time. I mean, the Norwegians have been waiting for so long to win. And every year, no, not this time either. So it was a kind of hysteria here when Bobby Sox won. And there were all kinds of competitions where people were trying to guess who was going to host, or how was she or he going to be dressed, and so on. In the fall of 85, I was hosting Norway's Oscar half a year before. I was singing and presenting and changing dresses, and everything went very smooth. until Roger Moore should be presented. And I mean, he was at the top then. And I was so happy to get this possibility. And then suddenly everything got stuck. Well, the rest of the show went well. And of course, I was very angry with myself afterwards. Why did you do this? I mean, this is unbelievable. Anyhow, afterwards there were going to be a banquet. And when I came down to the banquet, the head of the music department in the Norwegian Broadcasting came to me and said, well, we have been watching you tonight because we have to decide today who is going to host the big European event. And when we saw how you sort of saved that not very elegant mistake you did, we said, that's the thing. You are going to do this if you want to do it. So it was a big surprise, but of course it was great. And from then on, it was a circus. And the expectations were so big, not only for me, but, you know, Norway has developed very much since '86. And we still lacked some self-esteem. So it meant so much for us that this was going to be a success.
What was important for you and the production team to show of Norway?
The diversity, the nature, and at the same time, very many people know that Norway is a very beautiful country from Mother Nature's side. But the fact that Norway now was in the first part of being an oil country, it was also very important to show Norway as a modern country, as a country with a very highly developed technology. And this mixture was important.
Can you share anything with us that happened behind the scenes that you remember?
Oh, of course, there were it was a lot of things taking place. And for my part, I was at that time, I was president of the Norwegian Musicians Union. So I had some years when I first and foremost worked with negotiations and trying to improve the situation for performers and musicians. And so almost every year I was holding a speech on 1st of May. I mean, that's Labor Day, and that's the day when we, being part of the union work, we're usually out talking about the rights for the musicians and for the performers. And so I was asked to come to Bergen to hold the 1st of May speech 2 days before the big Eurovision show. And what happened was that the mayor of Bergen, who was a conservative politician, he thought this was outrageous, that I should come there before this musical event and talk about politics. There was quite a lot of fuss about that, but it all went well. And then, of course, there was also, a small scandal on the day of the final, because our crown princess at that time should make her entrance. Then there was a person who was very confused woman who came and threw something in the hair of the crown princess. And our crown princess then and our queen today is a very, very popular person. And there was people who were very upset about this, but it was all taken care of in a, discreet way.
Yeah, and thank God it was only water with sugar.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Did they tell you about this attack, or did they spare you the information before you went on live?
When I try to remember that now, I think they told me just before, but I'm quite uncertain.
Do you remember if you had any favorites among the songs?
No, I didn't really have, because I think as many, what should I say, colleagues who have been doing a presentation of one of these big galas, you are so concentrated on what you are going to do that you have some things you just have to say, this, other people are taking care of this, I do my job. So really, no.
There were a lot of discussions about Sandra Kim's young age, and it later turned out that they had indeed lied about it.
Mm.
Did you yourself doubt her age?
No, I just, she could have been 3 years older. She could have been many things. And you have all these committees, you have all people who are taking care of the rules for the show and everything. So it was none of my business, and I didn't really think much about it. But of course, it was evident that this was a very young artist, and the song she sang was evidently written for a very young girl. But I didn't really doubt it, no.
Everyone who has seen this show from 1986 remember clearly how you in the beginning of the show sang your own version of Tedum.
Soon we will know who will be the best in the Eurovision Song Contest.
How did this idea come about? Do you remember this?
I think it was 3 days before the show, and I was talking with Egil Monn Iversen, who was conducting the band, who was a very important person in music here in Norway. And I said, it feels in a way that I would like to have something to do that is a little special when I come in. And then he, who was a very powerful man as well, he said, well, you know, it would be perfect if you, who are the president for all the musicians and performers, that you did something artistic in this.
In 1990, the Prime Minister in Norway asked you to be the Minister of Culture in her government. What was your reaction when you got this offer?
I said yes, without hesitating. But it's interesting in a way, because this was not the first time that I had been seen as a possible Minister of Culture. In fact, these days in Bergen, when we were preparing for the big show, at that time a new government should be appointed, and at that time I was very much mentioned as a possible minister. I must say, though, that I was very happy that I had some more years to go before I took on that role. And the fact that the government that I was a part of in 90, it lasted 6 years then, while this former government just had a year to go. So
you were Norway's Minister of Culture between 1990 and 96, and one of the highlights during your time as minister must have been the Olympic Games in Lillehammer in 1994. I remember this very well, even though I was only 8 years old and not at all interested in sports. But it was a great success for Norway, partly because you took so many medals, but above all because you put Norway on the world map.
Yes, that's right. The whole nation was so proud. But for me, it was a great possibility to be, I was, should you say, Olympic minister in charge and also responsible for sports. So I followed this process all through for more than 4 years. And it was a little bit like Bergen, you know, everybody wanted so much that we should be successful. But at the same time, here in Norway, we have a tendency sometimes to be very pessimistic. You know, there is always someone saying, well, you know, it's not going to be any snow this year, and the Swedes will come and take all the contracts, and it costs so much money. You know, I didn't dare open the newspaper some days, because then there was some new catastrophe. Samaranch was not doing his job, and then it really was a success. But the snow came 6 days before the Olympic Games. At the same time, we felt that we had such good luck with us. And as you say, it was also the response from the whole world was heartwarming, really. Still people coming here as tourists or for other ways, they remember the opening of the Olympic Games in Lillehammer.
As a former Minister of Culture and as a former participant and host for the Eurovision Song Contest, do you consider the competition as a major culture event for Europe?
Oh, yes. Very much so, because, I mean, culture is not only singing and dancing. Culture is a way of living. It's the way we have developed our country. It's the way how we live and so on. I have been for many years very much interested in architecture and in city planning. So when the games were prepared, there was a very special emphasis on design, on architecture, on how the whole thing was designed. And as soon as the games were over in Lillehammer, I was invited to China because the Chinese Minister of Culture wanted to talk with me about something. And that was quite funny, because we went there and I wondered very much, what will he talk with me about? But then it turned out that he had been going from Oslo to Lillehammer almost every day in a limousine. And on the way, he had seen all these Norwegian kids being out in the snow, rolling around, skiing, you know, with blushing cheeks. And he said, our young people, they do not move as much as they should do. We want you to come to China and try to get the Chinese population moving. And, you know, we were then not 5 million people, and they were, I guess, 1.2 or 1.3. It showed what a strong impression different parts of the games were doing on the visitors.
From a political point of view, what does the Eurovision competition mean for Europe, do you think?
I think sometimes it's important to remember that when the Eurovision Song Contest was established many years ago, more than 60 years ago, it was going to be a contribution to peace. It was at a time when you still couldn't take for granted that people in Europe did go to war against each other. And believing that you had a joint stage for music from as many European countries as possible, that would be something very special. And the fact that the populations of the European countries were sitting down at the same time, looking at the same show, and the competition was about music, about songs, about the best show. Today it might, I don't think that the Eurovision Song Contest is maybe the most important reason for Europe being mostly a peaceful place on earth. But I still think it's something almost touching when you sit and look at this show. And for countries like ours, we remember, at least people at my age, we remember how much it meant for us to be part of this and to win or to get a good number of points. And now seeing some of the young member states and some of those who joined for the last decade, the Eurovision Song Contest, how much it means to them.
Some years later, you moved to Sweden and work as the CEO for the Swedish Film Institute. And recently, the American actor and producer Will Ferrell made a comedy about the Eurovision called Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga. And I wonder, have you seen this movie?
I hate to say it, but I haven't seen it. I would very much like to do that, but I haven't.
Besides Norway 3 times as winners and a few other good positions, you are the nation that came last most times.
Yes.
How come, do you think?
If you ask Norwegians about that, we will say, we have no clue. Of course, we shouldn't be last. But I don't really know.
Who is your favorite of Norway's entries, besides your own song?
That is a very difficult question, because the songs that have been representing Norway has been so different. They're so different in style and in so many ways that is very hard to compare them with each other. I think that of the first entrances we had was Voi Voi with Nora Brokstedt, a much loved, wonderful artist who was singing this song in a Sami-inspired costume. And one of the reasons why I think that is, at that time, it was expected, at least from the jury here, that you should both have it should of course be a good song, but it should also represent something typically Norwegian. And the fact that one that early was bringing in a touch of Sami culture, that was in fact very interesting.
Voi, voi, skjebnen vår ville at jeg skulle bli din. Voi, voi, om noen dager det lørdag du vet. Voi, voi, da vil en fager drøm bli virkelighet. Voi, snart vil du komme ned til dalen av kjæresten din. Voi, voi, uken omme, lørdagskvelden blir fin. Lørdagskvelden blir fin.
You have just released a new album, the first one in 44 years.
Yes.
Why did it took you so long?
You know, I had my debut when I was very young. And in fact, my musical career, when I was in my late 20s, I wanted another life. I wanted to, I studied law. I was sick and tired of traveling. So in a very short time, I was involved in many other things and I enjoyed it. I mean, I could have continued as an artist, but I suddenly wanted to do something different. Because I had never decided or had as a dream to be an artist for life. Some years ago, 10 years ago, I got cancer. And when I was through this, I had realized that I was not going to live forever. That hadn't really struck me before. So I asked myself, what do you really want to do with the rest of your life? And then I suddenly felt that I was longing for music again. So I rented a tower outside Oslo on the old airport. And then I spent 1 year sitting there singing through old songs, everything I had been singing before in my life, back in the Stone Age. And I continue as long as I enjoy it and as long as someone wants to listen.
What would you like to tell me about the album?
That it's a very diverse album. It was very hard to decide what I should record because I wanted to do so many things that an album, I mean, it is nothing. You don't have the space for it.
You made a new version of your old winning song, Intet nytt, solen.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd lenge. Jeg vet om en gammel mann, en som har levd lenge. Han så snill når han spør meg om hva som har hendt meg, og om solen har brent meg. Jeg svarer og søker trøst. Han gynger i stolen. Han sier med sprukken røst, intet nytt under solen.
The way I sing it now, I sing it. That's it. At least that's my feeling. Very much like I did many years ago. Not as fast as I did then, but very much the same. We have prolonged it by repeating some refrains. As we talked about before, this had a kind of world record in length or in shortage.
Yeah.
So, but then of course the band is much more in jazz style than it used to be.
Åse, I know that there is a special song on this new album. Can you please tell us about it?
There are many special songs on this album, but there is one special. One of the reasons why I started to sing, not only play guitar as I originally did, was the fact that there was an album released in, I think, 1963. It was the first album by Bob Dylan where he had been writing all the songs. And one of these songs that really hit me strongly was Hard Rain's Gonna Fall. And I recorded it when I was 15, I think. Before I was going to studio, I met a very young poet. He was 18. And I asked him to translate it into Norwegian. And he did so. He became a very well-known writer and a poet later. His name is Klaus Hagerup. It was a wonderful translation, but when I told the producer that now I have a wonderful Norwegian text, the producer was Swedish. He said to me, well, what do you think the Swedish audience would say if I presented a Bob Dylan song in Norwegian? Well, of course, I understood that would be a terrible thing to do. So nothing happened with it. And I recorded the song in English. And so all through life, when I went the young poet who was not so young anymore, he said, well, the day you make a record again, remember Hard Rain. And so 4 years ago, when I decided to make this album. He called me and said, well, do you remember Hard Rain? And I said, you bet I remember. That is one of the reasons why I want to make this album. And then I have been fighting to get the possibility to record it or to...
Oh, so the record company didn't want you to publish it in Norwegian?
Yeah. So for these 4 years, we have been discussing with the publishing company if, please, I could record this song in Norwegian. And then just some weeks before we went into studio this spring, we got the permission. That is, well, it's sad to say that this song has the same actuality now as it had in the beginning of the 60s.
Hva gjør du nå, min bleke venn? Din elskede kjenner deg ikke igjen. Jeg flykter mot skogen før natten kan nå meg. Jeg flykter langt bort til jeg finner ditt ansikt. Jeg blir til en ulv og jeg uler mot månen. Jeg blir til en ravn og jeg skriker i stormen. Jeg går til det mørkeste fengsel på jorden. Der bødderen alltid skjuler sitt ansikt. Og der sjelen er svart og der ilden er aske. Jeg synger det, tenker det, skriker det, lever. Og jeg bærer et speil så at alle kan se det. Jeg står på et hav og jeg står til jeg synker. Sangen er slutt, men jeg vet jeg må synge. And it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard. And it's so hard, rain's gonna fall. And it's so hard, it's so hard, it's so hard. And it's a hard rain.
Thank you so much for this talk, Åse. I'm happy that we finally got to have a chat slightly longer than our pinky pause in Karlstad.
Yes.
And thanks to you, dear listeners out there in the world. I'm so proud and thankful that you are listening, writing to me and sharing my episodes on your social media. You can contact me with suggestions, questions, opinions, or whatever you feel like by emailing me at emil@schlagervännerna.se or through Eurovision Legends on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe so you're always updated with new episodes. Stor kläm då, Åse, och ha det morsamt!
Stor kläm till dig också, verkligen. Det var trevligt att träffas igen.
Hva har jeg å vente på? Meg selv der i stolen. Når han er så trist der nå. Intet er nytt under sol.